This is in something called the Sermon on the Mount, and it's because it says he went up into a little mountain and sat down. And Jesus has lots of interesting things to say in this Sermon on the Mount. Many things worthy of pondering, and it's not always as easy and clear-cut as it seems to be on the surface. Jesus teaches many times in the Gospels in a kind of a way that's designed to provoke thought. And everything is not as straightforward as we would think that the way we might do it. He says things sometimes to make people think, and it makes you have to ponder what it is that he's talking about. For instance, here in chapter 5, verse 20, this is an interesting verse. He says, "For I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, you shall in no case enter the kingdom of heaven." Now this is interesting to me because, of course, when he said this, I'm sure all the scribes and the Pharisees said, "Amen, brother, that's good preaching." He says, "Unless your righteousness exceeds the scribes and the Pharisees, you shall in no case enter the kingdom of heaven." And at first glance, you might think, wow, that's a pretty tall order. That would be like coming into the Catholic Church and saying, unless you're holier than the Pope and Mother Teresa, you can't get into heaven. People would say, man, that's a pretty tall order, because the scribes and the Pharisees in this day were considered to be the most holy folks around. The scribes were the literate class and the ones who were in charge of reading and studying and copying the scriptures, and they were assumed to know all about it. And the Pharisees were the ones who prided themselves in conforming to all the requirements of the law. And as a matter of fact, righteousness itself, that's what that word means. It means to be in compliance with what is right. It's a compound Greek word coming from a root word, which the root of it is what the standard of what is right. And so righteousness means in compliance with or conforming to the standard of what is right. And so it seems as though on the surface he's saying, you've got to do more than the scribes and Pharisees are doing. But really, he's saying something else here. If I could paraphrase it and say it a little different way to help you understand, he said, unless you've got a righteousness, you have to have something better than what they've got. Now, before you get too excited about the scribes and Pharisees, now he seems to be holding them up as the example or the exemplars of what's best about righteousness. But look over with me just for a second. Look at something else he says about the scribes and the Pharisees in the 23rd chapter of Matthew. Notice what this says. Matthew chapter 23. This is interesting what he also says about the scribes and the Pharisees. Verse 27. Now remember, he just got through saying, unless your righteousness exceed the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, you shall in no case enter the kingdom of heaven. Look what he says about them now, verse 27. "Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees." Well, I'm sure they're probably thinking, well, wait a minute, you just got through saying back there in chapter 5, unless your righteousness exceed the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees. But look at what he says about them. Woe means bad news, by the way. Not just what you say to the horse to make him stop. This version of woe means bad news to you, scribes and Pharisees. Listen to the hypocrites. Now, you know what a hypocrite means? A hypocrite is a person who tries to present an outward impression that's not really true about what's the reality. He says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whited sepulchres." That's a grave, painted white. "Whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but within are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. Even so, you outwardly appear righteous unto men." See, that's what he's saying. And if you take this in the context of what we read in chapter 5, or take chapter 5 in context of this, when he said, unless your righteousness exceed this righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, you shall in no case enter the kingdom of heaven. Take this in the light of that, and you'll see that what he's saying in reality is, you've got to have something better than they've got. And what do they have? They have one that appears so to men, but on the inside is not. Here's something else he said. Let's back up. I wanted you to get that about appearing outwardly righteous to men, first of all. But look at something else he said about them. Go back to verse 25. I'm kind of going at this backwards. Look at what he says in verse 25. "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites." Listen to this. "For you make clean the outside of the cup and the platter, but within are full of extortion and excess." Thou blind Pharisee, verse 26, cleanse first that which is within the cup and platter, and the outside of them may be clean also. Now he's using dishes for a metaphor. He's saying, you have cleaned the outside of the cup, but the inside's all dirty. Now if you imagine a cup that you're going to drink out of or something like that, and you polish up the outside of it, so the outside of the cup looks really pretty, but you look on the inside and you say, I don't want to drink out of that. Look at that mess. And, what he's saying is, he says, you Pharisees have cleaned the outside, but the inside is not clean. That makes sense? And so everybody looks at the outside. Of course, humanly speaking, that's all we can look at, right? We can't look at the inside. You can't look at my inside. I can't look, but God looks at everybody's inside. But what he's saying here is, now remember, this all started back in chapter 5 when he said, can I paraphrase it, unless you have a righteousness that's better than what the scribes and the Pharisees have. Well, what kind of righteousness did the scribes and the Pharisees have? Because he said, unless you have a better one than they have, you can't enter into the kingdom of heaven. Well, what they had a righteousness that looked good on the outside to everybody else. It looked good humanly. Does that make sense? It looked good to appearances. But on the inside, it wasn't true. It wasn't conforming. The inside wasn't righteous. In other words, outwardly. What is outwardly? That's in our behavior. That's in our actions. That's in our word. That's in what everybody can see and contact us with on the outside. So outwardly you conform. Now remember what righteousness is. It means to be in conformity to what is required. To meet the standards of what is right. That's what righteousness means. On the outside, you appear to meet the standards of what is right as far as anyone can see. But on the inside, you don't. So a person might say, well, okay, then I need to clean what's on the inside. Now here's the problem, though. We can change our behavior on the outside by willpower or by turning over a new leaf or by redoubling our efforts and all those kind of things. And everybody can see that, and we can see that. But that's not really what he's after here. He says, did you notice he said, first cleanse that which is within, and that the outside of them may be clean also. He implies that if you could cleanse what is on the inside and make that clean, what's on the outside will automatically be clean. It will go along with it, see. Now here's the problem. How do you cleanse? How do you fix what's wrong on the inside? Well, I would say to you that it's humanly impossible. See, when he was saying you've got to have a righteousness better than the scribes and Pharisees, scribes and the Pharisees, he was holding them up as, could I say, the best example of human righteousness. The best example of what man-made conformity to the standards of what is right can produce. Because they were crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, and they were strict observers of behavior, and on the outside they seemed like the most righteous people of all. But he said on the inside, now see, here's the problem. You can't change what's on the inside. But you know who can change what's on the inside? God can change what's on the inside. We just sang a song about it this morning. I got something on the inside. You see, that's what a Christian is. A Christian is somebody who has invited Jesus to work on the inside. Now, here's another analogy that I make sometimes. If you liken your life, liken our lives to trees, the Bible does that too. It likens human beings to trees. He says, he compares people to trees by, talks about the different kinds of fruit. But let's just say if you had a tree and it was producing bad fruit, you might think to yourself, wow, that tree is producing some nasty bad fruit, and so what I need to do then is get rid of that bad fruit. Well, for one thing, is all the neighbors can drive by and look at it and see it, And I see it. And so I want to get rid of that fruit, that bad fruit. So you could, just thinking logically, humanly, you could say, well, I'll get me a ladder and climb up on the ladder and I will pull off all that bad fruit. Now that'd be a lot of work. If it's a big tree and it's been there a while, that might be a lot of work. Hello, right? But you could conceivably do that. Work your way around it, and that's what's hard about it. Once you get your way worked all the way around, it's maybe growing, popping back out again on where you started. But you could conceivably go all the way around the tree and pull all the bad fruit off. Now you have something that appears, you don't see the bad fruit anymore. But now you don't have any good fruit. So now what you've got to do, you've got a double job. You've not only got to pull off the bad fruit and get rid of that, but you've got to have something good that appears good on the outside. Well, how are you going to do that? How are you going to put good fruit in the place? Well, you could get a glue gun or some baling wire or duct tape. Farmers, with baling wire and duct tape, you can make any repair. You could get some, glue gun or, something like that. And you could go to Hobby Lobby and buy some artificial fruit. They make some pretty convincing fruit nowadays. Have you looked? I mean, they have some pretty good, they've got some fruit there that's artificial. It looks good enough to eat. It does. And you could get some of that